I'll be tying a Royal Stimulator today. I'm using a Daiichi 1270. This happens to be a size 10 hook, not a size 8. I just had the package here. Put the hook in the vise. And I'm using a fire orange Danville 6/0 thread, wax thread. Start behind the eye a little ways. And I'll coat the hook. I find that the elk that I use for the tail won't spin as much if I go ahead and use that. So this is some yearling elk. It's a little bit finer than cow elk that I use many times. Cut a small piece. And clean the fibers out. All the under fur. Go ahead and put it in my hair sacker. And as I pull it out, I'll see if there's any curvature, and it looks like it's going down, and I'll match that curvature with the hook. I want about the length of the gap of the hook beyond the hook. So I'll measure this, and with my thumbnail right there, I'll trim that, and then I don't have to worry about any additional trimming, I hope. So make 2 wraps and make 1 more, and that should secure it. And I'll just take a quick look and make sure that that's where I want it. And just take spiraling loops from here. I take a little bit softer loops. If I pull it tight, then it will flare, and I don't really want that, so I'll come back and tighten it down now. For the rib, I'm using Danville, some fine gold wire. I have a piece on my tying bench, I'll use it. I'll tie it on with a soft loop on the far side. I'll go back almost to the tie-in point. I haven't gotten quite that far. I'll take a piece, some peacock herl now. Take 3 pieces and trim them off of the stick. I like to use peacock from that. It just seems to work better for me. The fibers are fuller. And I'll trim about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch off, maybe 1 inch. And on peacock, the tips are the finest and frailest, and if you have problems breaking them as you begin your first wrap or 2, then try that trick, that'll help. So just take a soft wrap and wrap forward. And I want about a 1/3 peacock, 1/3 red floss, 1/3 peacock, and about 60% of the hook. So it's not very much. And I will go ahead and take these 3 fibers, and actually if I use my hackle pliers, I can grab a hold of it a little bit easier and twist them up, and just be gentle on the first wrap or so. If it's going to break, it'll break then. You notice I'm a little bit forward, but I'll make that first wrap back right on top of the elk tail, and I'll keep twisting then. And you notice these fibers are long right there, and I'll just keep moving forward. Twist it up some more. That should do it. And take my thread back, and I'm going to tie it off on the bottom with a wrap, and then just move my thread forward about the length of what I think the body will be, and then I'll take a couple of wraps in front, so if I bump it, then I don't have a problem with the peacock unwinding. Next, I'll take my uni floss. So this is single strand red, and I really like this floss. You can put it in a bobbin holder and use your bobbin holder to wind it then. So you notice I'll put it on the far side, reach down underneath, and I will make a wrap and 2 wraps and 1 more wrap, and trim the tag end off and continue wrapping backwards. Trying to keep it smooth. Go right back onto the peacock, and then I'll twist my floss clockwise a little bit to remove the twist that I make every time I take a wrap. And I'm just trying to use touching turns going forward to keep a body nice and smooth. Now it looks like I have one piece right there that I'll get rid of. And remember those 2 extra turns I took. I'm going to unwind those and then move my peacock out of the way and tie off my floss with 3 wraps of thread, and then a couple more wraps just again so I don't bump my bobbin holder and remove some of the tension. So now I'll remove those and I'm ready. And I'll again connect my hackle pliers and twist this. And at this point in the peacock, the stem is thicker, so you won't have as much problem with it breaking, but the fibers are not quite as large as towards the tip. And I'll make some wraps here and actually go over the top of it and tie it off on the bottom. That's 3 wraps, and take another couple wraps like I did before. Now I'll take a brown neck, and this is a size 16 for my size 10. I like to undersize them. I trim off and pull some fibers out. That'll be my tie-in point. Unwrap those 2. And I'm right back to the edge of the peacock. I take 1 wrap. Let's try that again. So I take 1 wrap there and go on the back side of it and forward 3 times. And that makes it go directly 90 degrees from the hook shank. I'll use my hackle pliers. And my first wrap will be right in front of the peacock, and then starting back and just open spirals. And I'll hold this up. Get my gold wire, and as I make that first turn, I can release my hackle pliers, and I'll make open wraps back, wiggling the rib material so I try not to bind down too many of the brown hackle. and make a full wrap in front, and we'll tie it off with another 3 wraps. Trim our hackle, and my wire with the inside close to the body of the scissors, and you want to save your tips for fine work. Now we're going to use some elk again. I've selected some fibers and see how that curves a little bit. So I'll open this up and you can see the fuzz that I can pull out. If you do this with your fingers, it removes most of the underfur. Put it in the hair sacker and pull it out so it's horizontal. Remember that curvature I told you? It's curving down now, so I'll pull it out and use that as I go back over. And my proportions, I want to try to align the tail and the wing. And that looks pretty good. Just like before, I'm going to use my thumbnail as the point where I want to trim the elk. Do it off camera over my garbage can. And just with a soft loop, actually if you go clockwise, that'll flatten your thread. Make 2 soft wraps and then pull, and 1 more, and that should secure it. And let's see if that's where we want it. It's pretty close. We'll go with that. And I just used my thumbnail to kind of center that and move it around the hook a little bit. And now I'll use some more wraps to secure. Now this is a trick that I've used. This next one, I'm going to go to the front and use a little bit of, I happen to be using some Zelon dubbing, but it could be any type of dubbing. My next application is going to be tying on some calf tail, and calf tail is very, very slick. And so what I'm doing is just creating a base over the top of my thread, and I'll just make touching turns going back, and I'll end right at the base. Now as I tie in my calf tail, that soft will actually, with a combination of the thread and the soft dubbing, it should catch this hard fiber, hard hair of the calf tail much easier. So calf tail can be very curvy, especially at the end like this, and that isn't any good for tying at all. What you want is the straight hair. And so this is the bone, and I'll pull it out 90 degrees. And grab a hold of it, and then I'll trim it close to the bone. And what you get is something like that. So you're trying to align the fibers as you pull it out 90 degrees. And just like with the elk, I'm going to hold the fibers and pull out this under fur, which is actually shorter. It's not really fur, it's just the shorter fibers of the calf tail. Now you can put this in your hair stacker, but I've found that trying to stack calf tail doesn't work too well. So what I try to do is hand stack it, and by that I mean I'm just going to remove the long fibers and then put this over the top of it. Twist it a little bit, take the long fibers out and put it on the bottom or the top, whichever works best for you. So you're just trying to align them close. It doesn't have to be exact by any means. And I'll just place it on top here. Again, I want them to match the length of the elk hair. And just like before, I'm going to hold it with my opposite hand and use my thumbnail as where I'm going to cut this. But this time, rather than cutting it straight, I'm going to cut it at an angle like this. I'll come over here. So you can see that it's shorter here and shorter there and longer on top. And I have found that this trick, which I learned many years ago from someone else, but I use 2 soft wraps again, and it allows you to wrap down on that, and I'll move those out a little bit, trying to go around the hook a little bit. And I'll place a few more thread wraps and then go down, trim those fibers that will go over the eye of the hook. You notice I'm using my hand on the vise just to steady myself. I'm going to look and make sure that I've got this directly on top of the elk, and use my thread wraps going forward, and then back to where the body, I'm taking looser wraps now, back to where the wing and the peacock match right there. The hackle in the front is a grizzly hackle, and this is a size 14 for this number 10. I'll pull some of the fibers out so I get the stem bare. And just like the one before, I'll wrap this, one on top, one behind, and then 3 or 4 wraps forward, and that should secure it. And the last material is some Angora goat. And Angora goat is the toughest material to dub in the world. It just is very, it's a little bit thicker and very slick. And the trick is using very little of it at a time and just squeeze. I use a little moisture and just squeeze and twist one direction. I'm going clockwise. Go all the way down to the bottom, close to the bobbin holder, and then repeat that going back. And then start wrapping from the hook eye, and we'll go back up to where the wing is. I'm just using touching turns. And once I get to the point where it's going to touch the wing, I'll go behind the hackle and then move forward again. And by going behind the hackle, it allows that to stick straight out still. And I will trim some of the long fibers and my thread, evidently. I was going to mention to make sure you move your thread out of the way, or that will happen. Make sure that I've got that caught. There we go. So let's try that again. Get some of these fibers out of the way. It doesn't have to be super close. Now we'll start wrapping the hackle forward right at the base of the wing, first wrap, and just somewhat open wraps. I'd like to make 5 turns of hackle right here. 3, 4, and 5. And then I hold my hackle with the opposite hand, bring my thread up, move the hackle forward, and drop my thread. I'll remove that, make 2 more wraps. What that does is to open up so you can put your thread wraps right against the stem of the hook, or the stem of the fiber. We'll pull all those fibers back and start to make our head. And I like to make the head about the same length as the hook eye. So you notice the length of the hook eye and the head. Trim those fibers. And I've also got my thread now right next to the hackle, which will allow me to create a nice whip finish, make touching turns going forward. That's 4 wraps and 5 wraps. And I just use the edge of my scissors and push and pull the thread at the same time. Push the scissors and pull the thread at the same time. And just like I did, I'll use my scissors and move forward and pull the hackle back at the same time, and that trims your hackle just right. So there's a finished fly. You can see the peacock, the red, the peacock. And that's a Royal Stimulator. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll put a link to the fly pattern sheet below.